welcome back to Rethink ADHD. Today we're gonna talk through what is it like to have ADHD. Now, a caveat to this is ADHD can be very different for every other person. So really and truthfully, I'm gonna be talking about how ADHD is for me. You may feel like, hey, that is actually how I feel. And you may say, no, my situation is a little different. But that's okay. It's all ADHD, it's all family, it's all love. I spent some time thinking about what kind of analogy I could use to compare my experience on a regular basis to something that everyone couldn't relate to, or at least like the neurotypical community could relate to. And I came up with this one. I don't know if it works or not. Maybe it works, I don't know, but let's try it. So we all have the experience of driving to someone's house for the first time and you've never been there. And if you think back to that, when you're driving the routes you're familiar with, so like those main core routes, maybe the interstate or the main road or whatnot, you're probably going pretty fast. You're like going like, I'm not gonna say with miles per hour, but you're going pretty fast because you're feeling confident, and the house that you're looking for is not yet coming up. Once you turn onto that person's street though, chances are, if you were listening to music and you were jamming, like I jam when I'm listening to music and I'm driving, chances are, once you start to get on that person's street and you look for their house, you're going to do two things. You're going to slow down because you need to carefully look at each house's number and figure out which one is the one you're looking for. And then you're going to turn your radio down because that's just sensory information you don't need right now while you're trying to focus all your energy on your eyeballs so you can see the right house, so you can get to your friend's house. So we've all kind of had that experience. Like if you think about it, that seems like a experience most of us have had, neurotypical or not. Thing with ADHD is that it's a bit like that with one exception. You can't turn the radio down and you can't slow down the car, and you still have to pick out the right house. So ADHD is an experience where you have so much sensory information at any given time, and it's hard to turn it down. Really hard to turn it down so that you can attend to this one thing, this one critical thing, critical piece of information, critical experience. It is really hard to do that. Some people think of ADHD as like, oh, channels going nonstop. And I do experience that in my experience, but for me, it's not necessarily channels, like I'm having a series of a bunch of thoughts. That does happen, particularly when I'm really tired. But really, I think what my brain is trying to do is process a lot of sensory information. So I am, attending to the dog huffing or scratching, or, I can hear someone flicking a lighter to light a candle. Like all of that information is not useful information for any reason, but that's the stuff that my brain brings to me, and it's like, here, these are things I've heard. What would you like to do with them? And I'm like, I want to do none of them. I want to do nothing with them because I want to attend to this one piece of information. So that's the closest comparison I can think of kind of what my experience is like with ADHD. And so then I started thinking, how does this show up in my life? And what I realized is this is probably the hardest part of building friendships and romantic relationships, and also of like learning in general, so being a student. Because if you think about it, your relationship with any person is based on a series of memories and shared facts that you all have decided are important, and they're gonna bind your relationship and bring you together. Well, what often happens to me with my ADHD is it's not that the situation isn't important, it's that there's so much information around me that it becomes hard sometimes to filter out what the most important pieces of information or the important experiences are. So later on, when that person is saying, hey, do you remember this moment where, this thing happened, and they're retelling the story and you can tell that it means a lot to them and it was a really important and impactful bonding moment for them, it sucks when you go to retrieve that memory and it's like a fuzzy, hazy, misformed kind of thing. You don't even really remember the full contents, who was there, where were we, I don't know. But oddly enough, you do remember the sound of the car pulling up in the driveway. That's not useful information. And so what can happen if you are in a relationship or have friends that are neurotypical is that they can attribute the fact that you don't remember as you don't care, or you're self-centered, or you only attend to things that are directly related to yourself. And that can be really painful to hear because that's oftentimes not the case. For me, it's just that it's harder for me to pay attention to things when there's so much coming at me at any given time. As a student, obviously, you're expected to sit there and listen to someone talk, and teach you things. If they're talking to you for, honestly, I think at this point I have like a 30-minute limit. Like if it's beyond 30 minutes, I ain't got it. I'm not gonna be able to remember any of this because that's as long as I can hold myself in focus. And so as a student, it becomes very hard to focus on the piece of information that the teacher thinks is important, just the same as it is with your relationships. So same problem, different places in your life where it manifests. And actually, that's one of the requirements for ADHD, is that it impacts multiple environments in your life. And so this is just one example of the ways that this thing impacts my life. But obviously, you're living in a neurotypical world. There's a lot of pressure to take in information, remember it, and turn it into something. So I have learned several hacks to overcome this. First things first, when I have meetings, I always audio record them on my phone or some other device near me. And the reason for that is I will be so distracted in the meeting usually that the likelihood of me remembering what we discussed very, very small. Also, as a student, I was also the student who would take the recordings or get recordings of the lecture and review them on my own time in a structured way that I could like conceptualize information. In my personal and in my romantic relationships, there is not a hack for it. I have not figured out a hack to remember. What I've learned is that folks with ADHD tend to remember things that have some kind of emotional tie to them. And I've challenged myself to think of, when someone tells me their name, to think of something that would be related to that I can try to attach it to some kind of feeling so that I can remember and pull it up. And that hasn't worked out too well for me yet. So my fallback is just to be an effective communicator. I tell my partner and I tell my friends, hey, I have ADHD. I'm gonna have great days where I remember everything and I'm on it and I'm organized. I'm like a different human. I don't know how that works. And then I'm gonna have days where I'm so scattered and I can't get anything organized and I'm not gonna remember anything. And I'm gonna tell you up front, it's not that I don't care about the anniversary. It's simply that I will have a hard time remembering if it's not on some kind of calendar. I just literally saw my partner drift through the back of the speaking of ADHD, I just saw my partner drift through the camera, and that was the ultimate distraction for me. So I'm gonna turn us a little bit so we don't have to keep doing that should she decide to come back. Yes, so I haven't figured out a hack yet for my personal relationships other than to just be an effective communicator. And I actually require the people in my life that are neurotypical to practice what's called double empathy. If you haven't heard about double empathy, look it up. It's super important for those of us that are neurodiverse to know this language. Double empathy is the concept that, it's not just the neurodiverse person that has to adjust to the neurotypical way of doing things and perceiving the world, but also the neurotypical person has to meet us halfway. Try to understand our lived experience and develop an empathetic, what I call compassionate understanding of that experience so that the pressure for us to mask and present in a way that we think is acceptable is lowered. That's a really different concept. And I remember learning about it like a couple of weeks ago and thinking it was really powerful because I think the way we talk about neurodivergence is often from the lens of like you're broken and so you are the one that needs to fix yourself to interact with the rest of the world, and that has not resonated with me because I actually don't think my ADHD is a liability, and we'll talk about that on how ADHD can be a superpower. And so adopting behaviors that suggest that I'm broken hasn't really been my thing. So I do effectively communicate and I do require double empathy and from people in my life, and that has helped a lot. No, I don't tell my coworkers that I have to record our meetings sometimes. I probably should, but I don't. but it's for my own personal notes, and then after I get what I need to get, I delete it. So I can say that that does work for me to play back information later on when there's a little bit less information, sensory information in the room. But yeah, that is what I can quickly compare ADHD to. It's a very hypersensitive experience. You feel, hear, see, smell, all the five senses, things more at a higher, in my opinion, a higher intensity than probably everyone else. So yeah, that's just feel for this one. I'm really curious. So I just told you my story. This is how ADHD shows up in my life. And I'm the type of person that believes that, it may be different for every person. So I'm really curious, for those of you watching this video, comment below, what is your experience been like with ADHD? What's your perception of that? And I think by having that conversation, we can learn a lot from one another and get a better understanding of kind of all the different ways that this can show up. I hope this video was helpful. If you love it, rate, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm not gonna say that 5,000 times in these videos because I'm gonna forget, but like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I hope to see you next Sunday.